All right. So here we are. Today's topic, the non-political art of managing up. This is the topic that it blows everybody's mind because of everything we have been told about managing up, having it be the secret of success, the thing that people are supposed to do well if they want to get ahead. But how do you do this? How can it be the non-political art of managing up? Well, I think we should jump in and just start talking about it.
I think we should too. It's taking one more minute for it to go live, but it looks like it's really truly gonna do its thing. So
Okay. I see that the little window says it's now streaming live on Facebook.
it's streaming live. So I want to get back to um, to this window where we are. All right.
All right.
I think
So,
we should jump in and go.
all right, let's jump in and go. So, speaking of what managing up is, when managing up, when we talk about it in the original context of it, it is seen as a way for people who are being managed to work with their managers to their advantage. I'll just say it plainly. The more common use is about getting your manager, your supervisor, your executive team to do, say, or think what you want them to for the purpose of enabling your team or yourself to do what you want.
Right.
It's the very basis of politics, what they call office politics. And office, and in this case, it is managing a person to do something that you want them to do. If it is giving you more people on your team, giving you more money for your programs, to get them to writing you a better performance review. It is about managing a person. And when you manage a person, what you're doing is you're manipulating them. Beth, do you have anything you want to say about that?
No, I think you nailed it. It's, so many people ask me constantly, like, what is managing up? Or how can I get my people to manage up more?
Yeah.
And so really understanding what it is you're looking for, because like so many words we use, managing up is a really loaded word. So, we're hoping that we can break it down to a definition that we can feel good about, that helps us all be healthy, clear in our communication, and really fact-based in our approach. So,
Right.
yep, that's
Yes.
all I got.
So what is managing up in the context of navigating challenging dialogues? So when we use the word management or managing in NCD, we are 100% talking about facts, talking about things that are fact-based, determining and agreeing what is true and what is in the best of the whole. This is 100% the NCD perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, how managing up is in NCD, it's about building a two-way relationship that allows information to flow in two directions, in the context of creating something that serves organization's highest goals and aspirations. It is all about building a relationship with your manager where you are both in contact with the information and always working on what is true in the moment and what is the best overall thing for your organization, your teams, and the goals and the overall goals of your company. Beth, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, the word that always comes forward to me in this is reciprocity, right? It's a reciprocal, managing up is a very reciprocal relationship, and founded in that core foundation of trust. And as we've talked about so many times, Trust is built one conversation at a time, one statement at a time, one action at a time. And it's depleted or destroyed kind of in the same way. Sometimes there can be a big avalanche, right? A big crumbling of trust from one action, but a lot of times it's chipped down, built up slowly, slow process. And so, in terms of managing up, trust has to be at the foundation, but it's a reciprocity of trust. A lot
Right.
of people only have one-sided trust, and they believe they're managing up, and they believe they're managing up. The purpose of it is for protection versus for reciprocity. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. I mean, I just want to stop for 1 second and say, this is a topic that Sasha really brought to our work because she was super passionate about it and people kept asking us. And I hadn't done the deep thinking and the deep analysis on this that Sasha has done. So I'm thrilled for this continuing dialogue about this, and I just want to honor that this is Sasha's thought leadership, and I'm thrilled to be part of it.
Oh, thank you. But I mean, truly, when you look at things through the lens of navigating challenging dialogue, everything you believe about the traditional tools of management shifts. And one of the things that shifted for me was the way I looked at managing up, and why managing up always didn't feel right to me, because I I would see, it's like I would see people tap dancing faster and faster, and some people just seem to be so skillful at managing up. And what I knew was that there was a big chocolate donut around the nose of some of these people. And I just couldn't stand it. But I wanted to build a better relationship with the people I worked for. And in learning the NCD, I was able to do that more skillfully. So the one thing I want to say about managing up is it is not a special occasion thing. It's not the thing you pull out when you want something. It's not the thing you pull out like, ooh, I have a need. I better go and manage up now. I better go and manage this person so that my team gets another person on it, or my team gets more funding, or I get in front of the executive staff to argue my case. But it's about building a trust-based relationship over time. So this is a long tail process. Managing up is built one conversation at a time, and it's always two-way. So the key thing is that you're always doing a fact check about what is true right now. Maybe your organization has a 5-year plan, and sometimes it gets pulled out and thrown on a PowerPoint, but it's never really looked at in any detail. And so it's sort of the expectation is like, well, we have a plan. Everybody should know what the plan is. And so everybody, could be working to this plan that people don't look at in any detail to see what's appropriate or what's real in the moment. And people interpret it in different ways, and they go off and do their own thing. I mean, if we were going to assume the very best intentions of a person when they are trying to work to a plan, is that they're trying to do their best to keep, in alignment with what they believe the priorities are. However, priorities are always changing. Things are changing. The world is always changing. Nobody really knew that we would have a pandemic this year, and it would throw every single plan into chaos. So in managing up, you are going and you are fact checking what is true right now, what is important right now. And in having these conversations all the time, you're building trust with your executive team, your leadership, your managers, so that they know that you are always trying to see what is the important thing to work on, and questioning them and getting them to do the deep thinking about what's important. Because honestly, it's very lonely to be a leader, because everyone expects you to have the answers. And the truth of the matter is that you're a human being. Leaders are human beings that have doubt, that have fear, that don't know, that can't see the future, that don't know everything. So when you manage up, you're actually building an intelligence network with your leadership, adding your thoughts to their thoughts so that you can create great solutions and work from those.
Now, I want to interject something. You know, now we're in a time when managers and leaders, leadership of your organization, people setting direction, are operating really hour by hour and sometimes even less than hour by hour, right? And so identifying like what's a simple question that you can be asking to get this. And it is really simple when we ask curious questions. What's important to you right now? What's the biggest priority right now? What's on your mind right now? Where do you believe we're headed right now? Those are the kinds of questions that people frequently don't ask leaders. And I think one of the reasons we don't ask, me as a leader, I think one of the reasons I don't get asked those questions is because sometimes people feel like they'll be showing weakness, right? They should already know where we're headed and what I'm thinking. Sometimes people just don't think to stop and ask and take a minute. But those are the kinds of questions that, when asked in a non political way, in a non manipulative way, with the right timing and the right moment, are really beneficial to building this reciprocity of trust and building this relationship. And Sasha talked a minute ago about managing up is not for a special occasion. And I love the way she puts that. It's not about getting what you want in a budget meeting. It's not about getting what you want in a staffing meeting. It's not about getting the contract you want put on your team versus someone else's team. It's about building the relationship that's going to carry you through those times. It's already going to be in place when those bumps come up, when those decision-making things come up, so that you are invited for your input. It's a logical thing for your leader to lean on you for your input in those types of decision-making places. It's not that I worked at one organization, we all had a joke. Whoever could be the last person out of the room in really tough decision-making conversations got their way. It was like the last word got their way. So we would all kind of be hanging out, and it would be really hard for the meeting to break up because nobody wanted to leave the room and be outside the negotiation once the meeting ended. That was unhealthy managing up, super unhealthy, not productive, and not what you want. What you want instead is when the leader is asked for something different than what was discussed in the room, they go, oh, wait a minute, let me get Sasha on the phone. Let's check in with her and get her perspective. We need her in the room for this decision. I want to see how it fits with her priorities. When you are managing up using the relationship approach, the NCD approach, the fact-based approach, non-manipulative approach, that's how it pays off for you.
Yes. So another thing about managing up is that this is a human relationship. And so this is a way for you to develop empathy for leadership. Beth has a story that she tells occasionally about when she was an individual contributor along with the rest of the other people who were doing sales. They would go have drinks and they would complain about management until Beth got a promotion. And then all of a sudden, everyone else went and got drinks, and she was the one who was being discussed. In the meantime, Beth is still a real human being, a person with thoughts, feelings, and now a shifting set of priorities because she had different insight, different view of how things are to be. And so when you go into these conversations, it is an opportunity for you to really check in with that person. They're not a bottomless reservoir of energy and focus. You can ask them if they have energy for what you're talking about, if they have the capacity to discuss this. You can really use this time to tune in and be curious about the real human being sitting across from you and build a relationship in that way. Not to manipulate them, not to get them on your side, but because it's a human connection. And work is such a wonderful way to build human connections with people, even above and beyond what it is that you're working on. Connection is so key to creating anything. Beth, do you have anything to add to that?
There's an exercise that I read about, and I did myself quite a few times, and I'm gonna just toss it out here, and it's gonna sound, well, I don't know what it's gonna sound. I got no idea, but it's really simple, and I encourage you to try it around the idea of getting, right? Being able to get something, and it's to stand in front of a mirror with your hand extended and to attempt to bring your hand forward in a way of giving to your reflection, but also attempting to get from your reflection at the same time. And to notice that. I was on a really great call with a client yesterday through Zoom, and she said, me trying to manipulate this situation is as likely as me reaching out and touching you through the Zoom screen, like literally touching you through the Zoom screen. And I just think a lot of times, even when we think we're inquiring with people in a really open-hearted, open-handed, non-judgmental, non-expectation way, in the back of our mind, we're still trying to get something. We're still trying to get something. So I invite you to enter into building connection with the idea that what you're not expecting, what you don't even know about, what you're not even thinking about, could be even more nurturing and feeding and valuable than all the things you imagine you want from your leader.
Yes.
So many times we want approval, we want validation, we want respect, we want all these things, and it's our wanting that puts up boundaries. It's our wanting that doesn't feel authentic.
Right.
Yeah. And Karen, you have a good point. I've worked with managers who seem too fearful to be open with human connection. That's when you use your teeny baby steps, right? Because human connection can simply be sharing a moment, sharing an out breath, right? It doesn't even have to be a spoken. It doesn't have to be a big ceremony, right? It can simply be being present in a non-judgmental, non-energy charged way. And it's important as you're building this relationship to actually ask, what does managing up look like for you? What do you need and want from me? What is the best way I can show up and support you? What are you lacking in terms of support from your team that I can step into that void and provide it? Asking those questions, but remember, when someone feels fearful to be open to human connection, relationship and trust is built one conversation at a time and one action at a time. And sometimes in the beginning, those need to be little, teeny tiny baby steps. Tiny.
Yes. So there's a flip side to this, right? So we're talking a lot about the person sitting across from you, you know, your manager, having empathy for your manager, finding out what's on their mind. In the meantime, there's this thing that's on your mind, right? There's a thing that you want, right? It's human. You want things. You think things should be true. You prefer things. You know, we have preferences. We have preferences for work. And it's very natural to want to advocate for the thing that we want. And part of the art of managing up is being flexible and adaptable, right? Despite the things that we want, the things that we think ought to be. So this is where we come back to one of the very core tenets of NCD. Your role as a manager is to be responsible for your own energy in the midst of sudden shifts. And if you feel yourself bristling with resistance or becoming angry, it's time to take a pause and ask yourself two important questions. These are the questions that will help ground you. What are you afraid of? And what are you disappointed about? And exploring those questions can help take a lot of the heat and fury out of the moment, the thing that you think you're going to lose, the thing you think you aren't going to get, the thing you think is going to happen to you. By exploring those and seeing what's under it and checking the truth of it. What is true about this? What's true in the moment? Being clean and clear with your energy when you go into the conversation starts with asking these questions. And it can only positively impact your leadership by doing so and have positive benefits for your team, even if you don't get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Beth, what do you have to say about that?
It's all about self-coaching, and that's what the NCD approach is about. It teaches you how to do thought work around the emotions, the feelings, the fears, the disappointment, the expectations, the shoulds, the assumptions that trip you up, the biases, implicit and unconscious biases, the things that trip us up and get in the way of clean and clear energy when we walk into the room. And yeah, Karen, it is that your fear plus your manager's fear in the room can be paralyzing, and it can be self-fulfilling. And that's when we go back to the really basic things, which are in-breath, listening for your heartbeat for a moment, and feeling gratitude for the simplicity of your heartbeat, putting your feet on the floor, grounding, coming back from disassociating. What happens when our amygdala believes that we are at risk, emotionally at risk, physically at risk, whatever it is, reputationally, doesn't matter. It processes that information and puts it in the bucket of bad, danger, da, da, da. And that's when the cortisol and the adrenaline start flying through the bloodstream, the side of your brain that's about collaboration, connection, thinking critically, all of that, empathy, it all shuts down because you're in protection mode and you're either going to freeze and disassociate. That's paralyzing, right? That's the paralyzing piece. Or you're going to get argumentative and defensive. And neither of those are managing up behaviors.
Right.
They're the kind of behaviors that when you walk out of the room, you're like, why didn't I say X? Or why did I say X? And why did that behavior happen again? I thought I grew past that. I thought I worked through that. I went to 10 years of therapy and I still behave that way. And it's because that's the way our systems are wired to protect us. And so through the NCD process, what we learn is how to hack that by bringing in oxygen, slowing down our breathing, grounding our feet on the floor, even imagining roots going into the ground to hold us in place, and being in the moment and feeling gratitude, because the frontal cortex of your brain cannot hold emotions of anxiety, stress, fear, and gratitude simultaneously. It doesn't do it, and gratitude wins. So even being in that moment, just being grateful for the beating of your heart, for a chair to sit in. It doesn't have to be big, grandiose, doctoral thesis on what you're grateful for. It's simplest thing. And so bringing yourself back down so that in those moments you don't go to those places. And when you can show up as a manager or a leader in that way with clean and clear energy, you build connection right then and there. Right then and there, connection begins to get built.
Right. So just a brief recap on the non-political art of managing up. What managing up isn't is going after what you want or getting something from another person or manipulating them into a thought or behavior pattern. What it is about building a trust-based relationship that is about checking facts and looking at what is in the best interest of the organization. It's about having empathy for your leadership and treating them as humans. And it's about understanding your own motivations and managing your own energy. That's it in a nutshell. It's about building a long-term relationship. That is it in a nutshell. That is managing up.
And I want to add something, Sasha, because this is one thing that comes up in coaching a lot, and is that people go in to meet with their manager, their supervisor, their leader. I mean, I'm using that term very broadly and generally, board of directors, whatever it is. And they ask them to do something, or they tell them to do something, right? Or they ask a question about why something was done a certain way. The tendency, the desire, the feeling to get the conversation ended by saying, okay, I'll get right on it. Yes, I'll move forward on that, whatever, and get out of the room super fast is something that I see a lot. And it ends up in people putting time and effort into a direction that was not what was intended. And the work here in building relationship is to take a breath and say, okay, I hear you. I have a couple of questions. Can you say more about what it looks like to you? Can you help me understand where for you this fits into the priorities? All of those type of questions, not because you're questioning the tactic, not because you're trying to get them to do something different, but because you want the end product of your work to be closer to what they're imagining in their mind, but not necessarily explaining. This is a very critical piece of managing up, because a lot of times we run from the room, not literally. I mean, you're not literally running, but you're getting out of there really quickly so you can go get to that task, right? Yes, William, or to understand the ultimate objective and not the specific steps requested. Exactly. And so asking simple, open-ended questions that get them to say more frequently helps them with their own thinking and their own verbalization around what the task is and what it looks like. And so part of managing up is being brave enough and self-aware enough to put grace in that space and pause and ask the reflective, open-ended questions that are going to be helpful so that you are more in alignment with what the objective and the goal is. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we have a bunch of great questions this week, Beth.
We sure do. And before we go there, I just want to let people know that next week's topic is going to feed into this. It's going to be bringing out what's best. And we're going to be talking about different ways to understand your learning style, your work style, your communication style, your strengths, your special talents. People are using this word all the time now, which cracks me up. Your superpower. And so we're going to be talking about ways to be able to understand that, to help understand about your team and what they bring to the table, your colleagues, your coworkers, and how to use that for good. So that's next week's topic, and you can go to the website and sign up. Do you have the question, Sasha, or you want
I
me to?
do. I have got the questions, and just to reiterate to everyone, if you come up with a different question and you want to just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Also, I just saw that Andrea put a link to where you can get the handout that comes with this, as well as the recording for later.
And we would love to know, I've sent out some questions to people who've asked questions to know if we're answering your questions, if you've had an opportunity to implement the things we're talking about and try them, how it's going. Please let us know. You can email us at support@bethwonson.com. You can post in the Facebook Navigating Challenging Dialogue group. We really want this to be of service, and so we would love to hear how it's landing for you. So far, we've gotten great feedback, but feel free to manage up.
That's right. Build a two-way relationship with us. That's what we're here for. All right. Shall we dive into the questions?
Let's dive, Sasha.
All right. Here we go. Question the first. How can I have my manager respond to my request sooner?
I know, wouldn't that be great?
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'd be curious about what's holding them up, right? What's holding them up? Do they need more time to think about it? Do they need to be able to measure it against other priorities? Do they lose track of stuff in the flurry? Are you communicating in the way that they communicate? Are you mirroring that so that you're using their language and talking in their way, which is part of what we're going to talk about next week? But I don't know why they're not. So it's hard for me to answer that question. So a managing up kind of question would be, hey, I am noticing that the time between when I send you a request and when I hear back from you is a little different than what I'm hoping for. So can you let me know what's going on in regard to that and how we can work together so I can get what I need in a time frame that's also going to work for you? Asking is the first thing that comes to my mind on that.
I would say also just understanding that your request, see where does your request fall in the big picture, right? It's like if you make a request for something, it may seem, from your point of view, it is probably super critical. And checking to see where it is in terms of what is critical for them can be very clarifying.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity for you to go and do some fact checking about where things are, just to make sure that you're both on the same page.
But this comes up, this is another topic that comes up a lot in our coaching practice. And I would say 8 out of 10 times when I say, have you asked? People are like, well, no, I didn't think to ask. Have you asked why? No, I didn't. I just assume it's my manager's job to get back to me really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, falls under in the category of getting people to do what you want them to do, which is not what we're teaching today. Okay.
Great.
Question the second. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Curious on the subject in general, have heard the term but unsure of the concept. So I think I want to just invite you, question asker, um, to just simply ask, put in the chat or respond to us through email if we answer the topic. I think that we have covered managing up pretty well. But if you have further questions, please post them in the chat or write us through email.
Well, can I just add one thing, Sasha?
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of information out there. There's even a book called Managing Up, which I purchased. Now I can't find it. Which is, it talks about the manipulative approach, like getting your manager to do what you want. And I just want to be clear that navigating challenging dialogue and our approach to everything we do, right? Every conflict resolution, management, team building. It doesn't matter what the topic is that we're working on, is about not manipulating people, right? It's about building trust, building reciprocity, and being really fact-based, being analytical, using discernment and analysis and facts, and doing your self-coaching to get there from here. And so there's a lot of information on managing up. And I just want to be clear that that you understand our approach and our philosophy, because we believe our work is about creating healthy, fact-based, non-emotionally charged workplaces where people can have authentic relationship and do their work.
Yes. Yes. All right. Ready for question the third?
I sure am.
Okay. How do you manage the employee that already needed lots of hands-on attention before the global crisis and during this crisis? Okay. What I'm hearing in this question is that the situation that we're in right now, it has made the hard to manage employee even harder to manage.
Mm-hmm.
So Beth, how do you manage that needy employee now that there's a crisis?
I can be the needy employee. So, I think things are unique, right? We're in territory we have never been in before. And so identifying pauses, and I encourage you to go back, and I can't remember so under the link that Andrea put up a few minutes ago in the chat, there's a whole repository of every one of these webinars we've done. And I know that's covered somewhere in one of them, but I can't remember right now what one it is. And it might have even been last week, week before last, which was answering unanswerable questions.
Yeah,
There
I
are
think
questions
so.
about, really needy employees in there. And so I would just say it's kind of the same. It's managing up, but it's just managing up differently and taking a pause to make sure that you're doing the relationship connection stuff. But also, you're not going to be able to serve everybody's emotional needs in this time that we are in. There's some work that people are going to have to do on their own to navigate these waters, to move through the charted waters. You've probably all heard the expression, we're all in the same storm, but we're all in a different boat. So you can't do a broad brush stroke to supporting every single person, but you can be clear about what the goals are, what the work that has to be done, what the resources are to support people, leaving time for questions and answers around that, and then asking people to come to you separately if they need, pauses, because people definitely need a little more space for processing a whole bunch of stimuli that we have never had in front of us before. So I'm going to encourage you to go back and look at answering unanswerable questions, which was the week before last. The recording and the handouts are all in that link that Andrea just put up in the chat.
Yes. Okay. What are the biggest mistakes people make in trying to manage up?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Ooh.
I think that the biggest mistake, even though there are books about it that say the opposite, is in trying to manipulate another person. Trying to manipulate an outcome is probably the biggest mistake.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes, is trying to manipulate an outcome. I also think, what that looks like is trying to speak louder, faster, trying to be super defensive about your position, not being curious. Not being curious. Curiosity is your tool to really deal with so many relationship building issues. And even it goes back to the last question about what to do with the needy employee. Curiosity. What's happening for you right now? All of those types of things. So the mistake in managing up is thinking that you're the expert versus you're the learner.
Yeah. Okay. When managing up is ineffective, what next? Wow.
Yeah, next.
I gotta know what does ineffective managing up look like? What is that ineffective thing?
Yeah, I mean,
what is ineffective there?
so if the person who asks this is here live and not waiting for the recording and is willing to either privately chat that to me or state, like, what was ineffective? Does ineffective mean you didn't get your way? Does ineffective mean that the leader is not responding, reacting, or behaving in the way that you hoped they would? So I'm curious about that, because the outcome of managing up is always that the organization moves forward on its identified goals and objectives. And if you don't know what those goals and objectives are, or they haven't been prioritized, you need to have that conversation and get clarity on that. And continue, even if they are, what are the goals for today? What are the goals for this meeting? What are the goals for this conversation? So for me, if managing up isn't working, then I'm curious if you're managing up in the way that we're talking about, or if you're managing up from the trying to get something. Because that doesn't work. Manipulation doesn't work with anybody. It might get you a short-term result. It might get you immediate what you want, but it is not going to build relationship with your colleagues, and it's not going to build relationship with your supervisor, and the end result is going to be bitterness, anger, and resentment, which it sounds like might be a little bit of it in this question. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't.
Okay, here's a golden one. Can you manage up when you have no relationship with the person?
And I'm wondering, so I want to think a little deeper about that question, if I may, Sasha.
You may.
It may mean no formal reporting relationship. It may not mean, it may mean it's managing up only for your direct supervisor, your direct chain of command. That may be what's behind the question versus the relationship in the way we're talking about. And so if in fact, I'm trying to see the question and I can't
Is
find,
on line.
I don't have the numbers, so.
Oh,
Um, so what I want to say about that is build the relationship. Yeah, so I got a private chat saying, oh yeah, thank you so much, saying yes, that is correct. When you do not have a reporting relationship to the person, can you manage up? Yes, the same exact things come into play. So you're not going to make an announcement and say, hey, I'm here to do some managing up with you, right? It's about building a reciprocal relationship where you're talking about priorities, where you're understanding where their thinking's at, where you're understanding what it is they need and want. And you're looking for what my mentoring coach, Lindsay Parrott, calls is the third door. I call it the place between A or B, right? Like getting what you want and not getting what you want. There's a place in there. There's room, there's space in there. So, I was on a coaching call with someone yesterday who's trying to manage up in a really big organization that bought their organization. They bought their company. Now they're under the umbrella of a really big one, and they need to advocate within that. And so in the coaching, the exact conversation we had was identifying what the person who's in resistance, what's important to them within this, and then figuring out a way to come together so that you can move things forward in a way that everybody's problem gets solved. Nobody has mud on their face. You're not trying to take anything from them. You're not threatening their reputation in any way. Not one isn't good and one isn't bad, one isn't right and one isn't wrong. But there's a place in the middle where you can come together and you can collaborate on the solution. And that is done by asking curious questions and building relationship and building partnership versus adversarial, I am trying to manipulate and get something from you.
right. Okay, here's a good one. You're going to like this one, Beth. You ready?
I am ready. I'm super ready.
How do you manage them without them knowing you're managing them?
Yeah. How do you do that, Sasha?
How do you do that? Well, I guess one is that it doesn't matter if they know you're managing them because you're building a relationship with them. I would hope that they know you're building a relationship with them. I would hope they would see that you're trying to be curious and interested in them and that you're trying to find out what the priorities are. I would love it if they could see that. That's actually the goal of this.
Yeah.
The question implies that you're trying to do something sneaky. If you don't want them to know that you're managing them, what that seems to be saying is that you're trying to manipulate them into doing something that they would not agree to normally do. So
this is not secret. This is not like secret code language for people who are managed, like people who have supervisors. It's not like a little secret code language. Managing up. Don't say it out loud. We don't want them to know that we're doing it. Most of the CEOs and executives that I work with want to know how to help their people manage up better. They want to know that. So we begin having dialogue around, what does that mean to you? What's helpful to you? Have you communicated how that would work for you? So I think you can have the conversation with your leader, supervisor, boss, whatever, board member, to say, I would like to be able to develop a relationship within which I can really support you to be able to move the organization forward in alignment with the priorities, the goals, and objectives, the mission, whatever it is, that's your guiding principle. It's not something you have to do secretly and overtly, But the word managing up is so loaded that for some people, if you say, hey, just want to let you know, I just took a webinar from Beth and Sasha, and they talked about managing up, and I'm going to start doing it with you tomorrow, they may have an objection to that because it sounds like manipulation.
Right. Okay, here's another golden one. What do you do if your peers are managing up harder or at cross purposes?
You manage up harder. You fight harder. You yell louder.
That's right. You go there and next time you have a meeting, you push that person into a closet and you lock the door. That's how you deal.
We're being sarcastic.
You use duct tape and you tie them to their chair.
It's a super good question though, because it happens, right? It feels like that. What's really happening is somebody is advocating and manipulating more craftily than you are, right? That's the political managing up, is when somebody can outgame you, right? The last person to leave the room gets their way. For 13 years, I did that beautifully. People were like, God, Beth, how do you get so many resources for your department? Well, because I understand the 3 people who give out resources in this organization, and I know how to manipulate them. I know how to get what I need. I know how to advocate in a way that gets at them. The easiest thing to do, oh my God, it's so simple. It's so simple, and you all know this, and you know people who do it, is to emotionally trigger your boss and cause chaos. Each one of you, if you think about it right now, you know the thing that will get your boss worked up. And you know how to say it about someone else. You know how to drop a hint about what somebody's working on. We all know how to do it. That's the shadow side of managing up. That's doing it in a negative way that creates drama and chaos within your organization. So don't be threatened by the person who's managing up harder and faster than you are. Build your relationship. Build trust. Ask curious questions. Ask to be invited into conversations where you sense that they are managing up harder than you. Keep your energy intact, breathe and pause, and wait for your opportunity to talk in a fact-based way, know your facts, about what it is you want to advocate for in a very fact-based way that's attached to the goals, the objective, and the mission of your organization. And if you built a relationship to know what and why is important to your leader, then you can calmly talk about that and how the approach that you want to advocate for, or the resources you want to advocate for, are going to help move that forward.
You can't be at cross purposes if you're working on priorities.
No.
If everybody is working on what is important, then you cannot be at cross purposes. The question is the person who is managing up harder is like, are they working on the organizational priorities? And if they are, it might be a great opportunity for you to learn from them.
Yeah.
If they are actually more aligned with the organization's purposes than you are. So it's really about figuring out what the greatest alignment with the priorities of the organization is, and then creating from that, not one person winning over another person. This is not about winning. This is about creating together towards something that is important to everyone.
And a great disruptive statement when you feel that's going on is to simply say, can we take a pause and go back to what the priority is here? To bring it back to that. If you are the person advocating for the priority. As Sasha said, if you aren't, if you have a special interest that's outside of the priority, then the conversation needs to go back to a discussion of priorities versus an application for resources, right? Or maybe you just need to get aligned.
So Beth, we have several questions left and we only have 7
Oh,
minutes
okay.
left.
All right.
So let's shall we dig in?
Yeah.
Okay, and are we agreeing that we'll go over, or do we want to just try to get through them in 7 minutes?
Let's try and get through them in 7 minutes, and if we need to go over, we will. And if people need to leave, they can listen to the recording.
There you go. All right. Okay, what are some strategies I can use to keep making progress on an issue that my manager is resistant to or defensive about?
Ask why. Curious questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep connecting to what the priorities are with your manager, and just find out if they're defensive. Just ask a curious question. What's going on? That is the most basic tool you can use.
What are you trying to protect? What do you want to protect? That is a great question to ask in a non-attacking way. Just help me to understand. I've heard you say no. I heard you're not putting resources, but let me know the why. Let me know what you're trying to protect. And sometimes, you know what? You got to stop advocating for it. It might not be the priority.
Yeah, but you won't know unless you ask.
Yeah.
Can you discuss the distinction between managing up and alignment?
I feel like that's what we've been talking about.
It is alignment. Managing up from our model is alignment, being aligned with what's important.
Now, if you are not in alignment with the goals and objectives and the mission and the vision of your organization, you might need to think about going someplace where you are in alignment.
Yeah. Yes. If you're not doing, if what the company is doing is something you don't agree with, or you do not want to be engaged in, it's time for you to manage your own career and find something else. Honestly, that's true.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah. Okay, how to manage after hours calls and emails from executives. Ooh, I guess the question is do you have a culture where you're always on? And is that something that you want to work in, or are you trying to, I guess, it's when you're asking that is like, are you asking, should you set a boundary? Can you set a boundary? What do you think, Beth?
I've spent a lot of time in this spot because it's a big conflict that comes up in a lot of coaching. And in talking to zillions of executives about this, many times executives aren't looking for an immediate reaction, or they're not even thinking in terms of time and space. So asking that curious question of, I've noticed that you're emailing me on the weekend, that you're emailing me late at night, and I'm wondering, what is your expectation for a response? But if you are training people that when an email drops in, you're going to respond to it, even if it's 11:30 at night, even you're going to take their call or answer their text, even if you're at dinner with your family, and that is the way you have trained them to expect that, then there's some boundaries that you need to set, and you need to have some conversations, and that's self-management, right? But if you are actually asking and finding out what is your expectation when you do this, you may find out that the expectation is, I told the people I work with right from the beginning, I may email you on the weekend. That does not mean that I expect you to answer that email till Monday. It just means that it came up for me, and I want to get it recorded and asked before it leaves my brain.
Right.
But I have no expectation of you answering it. If I need you immediately, which is really rare, I'll text you.
It is a tricky thing. If you are in a work culture where performance is somehow judged by how you show up off the clock, or that the clock never stops, um, stepping out of that may feel very uncomfortable. But in the larger themes of your life, you have to make decisions about your career that work with what you want from your life. And it's frightening when you see other people logging on. I used to log on like every Sunday evening before work and just start working, even though work really officially started on Monday morning, because I knew my colleagues were doing the same thing. And if I didn't do it, I felt that it would affect my performance. I actually have no idea if it improved or, my performance rating or not. I just thought it did. And
Well,
so I did it.
and I happen to have insight to where this question came from. And so I happen to know that this is a culture where things happen fast and furiously. And it is a culture where the expectation is that you answer it. So I would really encourage you to have a conversation about how to differentiate what is urgent and what can wait for an answer after hours. And I think there's room for that dialogue in your particular situation, but it's taking the time to be able to have the conversation, ask for clarity, and having the courage to have the conversation, ask for clarity. And I think it can be done.
Right. Okay. How do you come back to the boss for the third time on something you need from them? I wonder if this is a little like the question that we got earlier on about how to get your manager to respond to you sooner.
Mm. Yeah, I'm wondering that too. And if the person who asked it wants to pop in the chat privately or whatever, their answer to that, then I mean, if that answered it or not. But at the third time, you might want to do some inquiry about if it's a priority for them. Also, I know, and right now we're sheltered in place and we're not working in the same room and everything, but sometimes we depend too much on email. So are there questions that can be asked in a phone call, right? Sometimes the question is way longer than responding by an email. So if you're asking the question for the third time and you're still not getting an answer from them, they've either lost track of it, it's not a priority, they don't understand the question. Those are generally the three reasons people don't answer. So problem solve from that approach.
Okay. How to encourage your boss to listen to you as much as you listen to them?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. That's a really tricky one. And so, we're going to talk about personality styles next week. We're going to talk about work styles and communication styles. Some people need a lot of processing and talking time, and some people really just want to get a quick answer out there and move on. So again, it's about asking open-ended questions to keep them talking. It's about, having the right timing, saying perhaps I need to talk about this a little further. Is there another time we could talk? Getting undistracted time. But we're going to talk about this a little more in the call next week too. And that's a tricky one.
Yeah, the thing is that what you're talking about is trying to manage another person's skillfulness. And if they have not developed skillfulness in things like active listening, the way to help them is to ask for what you need, to say, I am not finished with my thought. I need to tell you a little bit more, to even prime them to say, I need for you to sit and listen to me And you may even spend, like set an expectation of time. I need you to listen to me uninterrupted for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for whatever, so that you can communicate the information.
That
You need to prime them in that way.
Yep. Setting the tone for what it is you want from them at the beginning, because I'm willing to guess that they hear a little bit into what you're saying, then they go on problem solving mode.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How do I advocate for myself while feeling safe?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. To advocate for yourself, to bring up things that perhaps are uncomfortable. That's it. It's like, that's really the key of it, is like what you're talking about feels uncomfortable and feels unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is like the tools that I would say immediately are to use the basic tools of grounding yourself and managing your own energy, right? You do not have control over what's going to happen in the chair across from you, but you can work on grounding yourself, understanding the thing that is making you afraid, to simply ask yourself the question, why do I feel unsafe? What is at risk for me right now? What am I afraid of losing? What am I protecting? To ask those questions up front, to ground yourself and to come into the conversation fully understanding and appreciating those things.
I also think a piece of vulnerability is being able to say, we have not developed our working relationship yet to the point where I know how this is going to land for you. So I'm going to take a little bit of a risk, and I'd like you to give me feedback, right? Because I'm not sure. I use that language a lot, saying, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here. Because it lets someone know, without saying I'm going to roll over and show you my white underbelly and let you chew my guts out. It says, I'm learning what the boundaries are. I'm learning about the emotional safety of this. This is risky for me. Not in a manipulative way, as a fact. You're communicating a fact about you.
Okay, last one we got.
Yeah.
Where do I start in managing up authentically?
Relationship and curiosity. Building trust.
Building trust, one conversation at a time and one behavior at a time.
And state your intention. I would like to build a supportive relationship where I can help you to move forward and achieve your goals. Some people call it managing up. I'm calling it building an authentic and trusting relationship where we move things together in alignment. If you're a manager argues against that, I'm not. That would be odd to me. Yeah, so thanks for hanging in here. I hope we answered your questions. We're going to go to the Facebook chat and see what shows up there in terms of questions and comments people might have put on. We love engaging with you in this way, and we're hopeful this content is supportive. I love seeing familiar names and new names. You can contact us to give us feedback and let us know how this is for you at support@bethelunson.com. Go to the page that Andrea put in the comments to get the previous recordings, all the handouts and worksheets. As soon as this is up on there with the handout that goes along with it, we will let you know, and you can go in there and grab this too. Thanks, you guys. Be safe, be well guided, well protected. We are here to support you, and we are deeply appreciative for you and the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See you next week.